Alright, so today we've got a new patch for Helldivers 2. Patch number 01.000.200. Dropping on April 2nd, 2024. I've only had a quick peek at the patch, but it looks like mostly balance changes, which I love to see. It's not a huge patch, but from the track record of Arrowhead, the developers, they're doing a great job so far of making each little tweak, every update, make the game feel a lot more intuitive. Luckily for you, I'm here to read through all these patch notes, so you don't have to, whilst giving you at least some level of visuals to go alongside it. I'm just going to jump into the SES, Stallion of the People, have a look around the ship while I read through these patch notes. So going from the top, gameplay, planetary hazard additions, blizzards and sandstorms. I mean, that just sounds like, more variety. We'll just see how that adds to the game. Increased level cap from 50 to 150. That is massive. Of course, that's preparing for the end game. I'm sure there's plenty of people who've got to 50 already. And it looks like this is just going to be setting up for the next war bonds they have coming up for us. Balancing, missions, retrieve essential personnel, move the enemy spawn points further away from the objective to give players a fairer chance of defending their location. There are fewer civilians required to complete the mission on higher difficulties. It doesn't say exactly which difficulty that kicks in. Is it 5, 6 plus? What counts as more difficult? Next mission, destroy command bunkers. Has more objective locations. The mission was too easy before compared to other missions. It can now appear in operations from difficulty 5. It's an objective made for the harder difficulties, however, they seem to think it was a bit easy compared to the other missions they had. Operation modifiers. Halved the negative effect of operation modifiers that increase stratagem cooldowns or call-in times. Love that. It was absolute chaos, especially on those harder difficulties, buying time for those stratagems. Once you get to these harder difficulties where there's far more armor and you're far more limited on what weapons can actually do damage, those stratagems are essential. And once it's, 150% negative impact on some of those modifiers, pretty brutal. So love to see that change. Okay, moving on, we have our weapons. Going alphabetically by the looks of things, the Arc Thrower has a few patches. Fixed charging inconsistencies. It will now always take 1 second to charge a shot. So let's load up. So the charge time to get that to fire has now got a consistent value of 1. I never experienced this myself, I haven't really used it much, but there seemed to be some inconsistency on how long that was taking to charge. Whether it was going too fast or slow, I couldn't tell you, unfortunately. Arc Thrower. Reduced distance from 50 meters to 35. Love to see that. One of my friends is an Arc Thrower user. He knows who he is. I've seen that Arc Thrower bounce through 5 bugs and just zap me from the other side of a crater. It is brutal. So this should reduce the chance of that. As I say, increasing the intuitiveness of the game. Feels like a shorter range weapon to me, that Arc Thrower. It doesn't feel like a sniper. So reducing that chain, personally, makes sense to me. To trade off with that, they've increased the stagger force, which again sounds very intuitive. I'd imagine a lightning gun should have some stunning impact. That lightning element is often in most games considered somewhat of an EMP, so it makes sense to see it increase its stagger potential. Guard Dog now restores full ammo from supply boxes. Again, it's not one I've unlocked as you see on screen. I don't have this stratagem unlocked, but I've had a few friends drop it and picked it up, found some around on the maps. I have been watching it deplete its ammunition reserves. I don't know if that meant it never restored ammo before, or it just restored half or a portion of its ammo. I couldn't tell you, but now it's a full reserve of ammo. So, Breaker Incendiary. Damage per bullet increased from 15 per bullet to 20 per bullet. So that's in the scatter of the shotgun. Each pellet that it actually fires has had its damage increased. So the overall damage is increased by 25%. That is a significant chunk of damage. So on top of the fire damage, the actual impact got a massive increase in damage. And it's an interesting one to think about, because the Breaker, when firing at distance, you can really spread those bullets to apply the burning, the incendiary, to a wave of enemies to have them tick damage over time. But this patch gives it more impact when nailing every single pellet into your target will make massive use of this extra damage. But then we moves us on to the next note. Fire damage per tick increased by 50% from all sources, so that's not just the Breaker Incendiary, that's napalm, that's the incendiary grenade that we get on this pack as well. I did see a little thing on Reddit, you can go and find it yourself if you're interested, that fire damage was bugged out unless you're the host of the game. And I've been feeling that myself. For someone who uses napalm, it's seemed pretty lackluster. Liberator Penetrator now has a full auto mode. I personally was a fan of increasing the scope and going semi-auto on this weapon, but I can definitely see use of reducing that scope and going full auto. Seems like a great option for this gun, especially with the medium armor piercing. It really, again, adds to the diversity of weapon. I'd love to see it. And being able to do it on the fly in a game and be able to swap between that semi-auto long range scope, swap to a short scope and go full auto sounds really cool. The JAR 5 Dominator increased damage from 200 to 300, 33% increase. So again, there's another weapon I've not picked up. I think one of my friends has got it and just didn't see the use of it. So it sounds like a 33% increase in damage is what it needed. An increase to stagger, I would, again, just from the look of the weapon and the sound of it, it feels like something that would have big stagger impact. So again, intuitive to see it increase its stagger damage. Diligence Counter Sniper. So this stood out to me early on in my playtime. I definitely wanted to grab this weapon. I was a little bit let down, I have to say. The sluggishness while trying to turn while scoped in with these weapons is really not my playstyle. Anyway, the patch. Diligence Counter Sniper. Increased armor penetration from light to medium. Again, what can I say? These guys are great at seeing the errors in their ways, I suppose. These guns, again, you look at that and you think, tank busting sniper rifle. Didn't have medium armor penetration, now it does. It just makes sense to have it. When opting for the Diligence Counter Sniper, you are kind of sacrificing your ability to wave clear, at least with a primary weapon. You're generally going to have to take another stratagem to deal with crowds, so that trade-off needs to be rewarded by being able to take out heavy single targets with your primary. And without the medium armor penetration, it just really didn't have that impact. I've used this quite a lot myself, and I do have to sit crouched, taking my time to really line up those headshots. Especially against automatons, you really need to stop, crouch, and line up those headshots. Now that it has medium armor piercing, you get a lot more opportunities to deal damage without needing to line up those headshots. Because previously, your bullets would just ping off if you didn't get a headshot, and now medium armor penetration will make this weapon far more impactful in a wider range of uses. Big fan of that change. It makes perfect sense, suits the weapon, suits the playstyle. I'm all for it. Okay, now the Slugger. I was trying to make sense of the Slugger this week because in the weapon traits it said light armor penetration, but I was definitely doing damage through armor. My slugs were not bouncing off any heavy armored enemies. What my takeaway was assuming the Slugger just destroyed armor rather than penetrating it. It seems Arrowhead have nullified that thought, and they've added medium armor piercing now as part of the weapon trait. Reduced stagger, which was a massive thing for the Slugger, actually. I'm a big fan of the stagger in this game. I think it has great impact, so it's something I've been paying attention to. Reduce the damage from 280 to 250. Reduced demolition force. Okay, so maybe I was onto something with the armor damage. Maybe that was the case, that the Slugger did light armor penetration, but would destroy medium armor. Which leads on to the next note. Fixed armor penetration tag in the menu. So it sounds like the medium armor penetration is just a name change and not actually an update. Right, okay, so these nerfs aren't a trade-off for medium armor penetration. They have just straight up nerfed the weapon, stating that the penetration tag was just incorrect. It was a great gun. I think it still probably is a great gun. Next note, Slugger Liberator Concussive Senator. Fixed incorrect armor penetration tag. So I think I have the concussive here, Liberator Concussive. So now that says light armor penetrating. I don't remember if that said medium. I don't feel like it did. I feel like it didn't say any penetration at all. So that now states medium armor penetrating. I don't even actually remember checking, but I just assumed it did. Stratagems. Recoilless rifle. Increase the number of rockets you restore from supply boxes from 2 to 3. I used this for a bit. I actually ended up moving back to the expendable anti-tanks and just preferred the fast cooldown on the expendable. And I think that's fair to say that this patch will have an impact on that decision. I do remember taking the recoilless, and with the massively long cooldown time, I would be drained of my ammo, especially again as I get to those harder difficulties and I'm firing out rockets more rapidly at heavier armored enemies. I would find myself without a support weapon waiting another 2 minutes for the cooldown. especially when I had those operation modifiers that would affect your stratagems. Spear, increase the number of missiles you restore from supply boxes from 1 to 2. Heavy machine gun, I've got the heavy machine gun here. I did have a play with this the other day. One of the new stratagems that was added recently. Heavy machine gun, the highest fire rate mode reduced from 1200 RPM to a more moderate 950. The first thing I did when I picked up this gun was ramp it up to 1200 RPM and drained my ammo within half a second. It was absolutely absurd. You didn't hit anything. So I did start using it on the slower fire rate, but maybe this might change my mind. Patriot Exosuit. That is another stratagem I've not yet unlocked. I did get a chance to use this during the order where we'd received it as a free stratagem. So in the patch notes, Patriot Exosuit. Rockets will now penetrate armor only when direct hit. I mean, I feel like I kind of expected that to be the case anyway, but AoE damage against armored targets, I think that's not going to happen that often anyway, to be fair. Be certain bugs that will help against, but I don't think it's that noticeable. Okay, so moving on from stratagems and weapons, we're onto enemies. Balancing adjustments have been made too. Charge's normal melee attack now does less damage against exosuits. I mean, the exosuits felt like a bit of a glass cannon, and I think they're fine to be that way. It makes sense, so I don't know. Maybe there was just a simple nudge from the charger that was blowing them up. Again, I haven't had enough time to really get experience with it. Bile Spewer and Nursing Spewer do less damage with their puke. The amount of times I've been tapped in the ankle by just a nudge of spew and immediately died, I cannot tell you how many times that had happened. I've always felt there's been something a little bit wrong with that. Something's definitely not feeling right there. I don't know if this is going to solve the issue I've been seeing, but at least I'm going to die to it less. I'm happy with that. The Bile Titan can no longer be stunned. I didn't even think it could be stunned. Is that based on stagger, or is that, I mean, stunned seems a different word to stagger, so all these weapons that have stagger. Stun seems to be a different thing. Is this Tesla Tower? I mean, I've hit it with rockets and I've seen it fumble, but a stun? I'm not quite sure exactly what it means by that. Regardless, it's not going to happen anymore. Shriekers no longer create bug breaches. I did not realize they did. How do they even create breaches? Do they do it while they're in the air? Shriekers hitting you while they are dead now does significantly less damage. I assume that means it also does less damage to enemies, because I did see that you could take Shriekers out of the sky, land it on a charger, and take the charger out, purely from the damage of its body impacting on enemies too. At least we're not going to insta-kill by a Shrieker Ragdoll anymore. And then on to the Helldivers. Balancing adjustments have been made too. Heavy and medium armor protects better, and you now take about 10% less damage than before while wearing heavy, and about 5% less when wearing medium. Fortified Commando and light armor is unchanged. It seems to be fairly common from what I've seen online, is everyone saying the heavy armor just is not worth it. I've been sucked in by the throw damage you get from the Steel Trooper. I can only assume that Fortified Commando has been a buff available in the Superstore, because it does seem there are some unique effects you can get on some of the armors available from the Superstore. If you know what that is, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to see it, because I can't find Fortified Commando in the acquisitions list. Okay, so the rest of the patch is bug fixes. We've got an issue on PS5 where it wouldn't save the settings properly. Enemies now properly target exosuits. Previously, many enemies effectively ignored the exosuit if the Helldiver on foot was available for them to target. Did not know that was a thing, so that's a bit scary for the glass cannon that is the exosuit. Given the huge frame of the exosuit, especially against automatons, that's a scary change because of the size of the exosuit. There's so many ranged attacks that they have available. The speed of those rockets coming from the automatons will absolutely annihilate that exosuit. And if it's prioritizing them now, that's worrying. The Helldiver and Exosuit both had a bug that made them sometimes take explosion damage multiple times, making things like automaton rockets be too deadly. This is now fixed. Automaton enemy constellations that prefer to spawn certain Devastators types, seems like a double plural, did not work and are now functioning as they should. This means that sometimes, when playing against the automatons, you will face more Devastators instead of the other enemy types. So Devastators are the automaton that can come in a few variations. Sometimes they have the shield, sometimes they have the rocket pods and the standards with a large autocannon. There's a little bit of a line break. We have improved the system that prevents Hellpod steering close to large or important objects. That was actually getting really annoying, where I just had absolutely no control over my pod when it seemingly didn't have any obstruction. It just started steering the pods away because there was a bit of rubble on the floor. So there's a few points just explaining how they've achieved this fix, basically by clearing the rubble and streamlining the hitboxes around the objects. Right, and then there's a few changes to the ballistic shield, which is the kind of riot shield item. I've not really seen anyone take this other than the one time we unlocked it, because it just, I don't know, it just never really felt that effective. Maybe these bug fixes can address that. So, you know, collision mesh has been slightly increased in size for more forgiveness. I assume this means they've just given it a larger protection radius to make the shield slightly bigger. Change shield poses so that less of the Helldiver is exposed, so they've moved where that shield is actually to make it give you a bit more cover, and addressed bug where parts of the Helldiver would become vulnerable while using the shield in first person. As someone who plays pretty much purely on first person, didn't know that was a problem, but I'm glad I don't have to deal with it. There's a couple of fixes for the tutorial, and then we go into the list of known issues ongoing with the dev team. The game might crash when picking up a snowball or throwing back a grenade. So, didn't know I had to look out for that, but I'm glad I know now. Got to be careful of those snowballs, and a few known issues about friends list. This seems to be quite a point of contention with this game. There's quite a few issues around invites and lobbies in this game, but crossplay seems to be on their radar quite heavily. So they're doing a great job of tweaking all the weapons in the game, making them more intuitive, making them flow better, and giving the players a better variety of gear to battle with. I'm looking forward to having a play with some of these new changes. It's going to be nice to have snipers back in the rotation after feeling a little bit lackluster. But yeah, I thought I'd spend my night having a little ramble about patch notes. I'm the resident patch note enjoyer. I love reading through patch notes, so if you found this useful, let me know and I'd love to do it again for you. Unfortunately, I'm not the most seasoned Helldiver, so I don't have a full understanding of all the weapons, but I hope I've had enough insight for this to be a bit useful. Alright, I'll see you on the drop, and have fun spreading democracy.